Carefully preserved since the year 1578, the Shroud of Turin found its sanctuary in the royal chapel of the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista. Its dimensions were awe-inspiring, stretching to a length of 4.3 meters and a width of 1.1 meters. What made it truly captivating, though, were the faint brownish images that seemed to grace its surface. If one gazed upon the shroud, they would behold the ghostly impressions of a gaunt, sunken-eyed figure, a man standing at a height of 5 feet 7 inches. It was as if the shroud had borne witness to the last moments of life, with one half of the cloth showcasing the image of a body laid lengthwise, and the other half gracefully folding over to cover the entire front from face to feet. But that was not all. The images on the shroud were said to contain marks that were eerily reminiscent of the wounds endured during the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. There were thorn marks on the head, as though a crown of thorns had been painfully pressed upon it. Lacerations on the back seemed to speak of a brutal flogging, while bruises on the shoulders hinted at the weight of a heavy burden carried. The most poignant of all were the stains, believed to be blood, scattered across the shroud. These stains, it was whispered, were the sacred reminders of the ultimate sacrifice made for humanity. However, it is important to note that the Catholic Church does not take an official stance on the authenticity of the relic. The Church has refrained from asserting that it is anything beyond an icon of Christian devotion. They do acknowledge that millions of pilgrims see it as a symbol representing the mystery of the Passion and death of the Lord. Since the late 19th century, scholars have delved into the shroud's mysteries, employing scientific methods in a quest to ascertain its authenticity. A remarkable observation surfaced in 1898, when experts noted that the sepia tone images on the shroud bore an uncanny resemblance to photographic negatives rather than positive images. In 1988, the Vatican decided to address the authenticity question once and for all. They entrusted 3 laboratories in different countries with tiny samples of the shroud's linen cloth, each no bigger than a postage stamp. The purpose was to conduct carbon-14 dating on these samples and establish the shroud's age. Much to their collective astonishment, all 3 laboratories independently reached the same conclusion. The cloth had been woven between 1260 and 1390. However, here's the intriguing part. Despite the carbon dating results, scientists are unable to explain the image on the shroud. It displays a photographic negative of a body bearing wounds consistent with those that Christ would have had. While experts can confidently tell that the shroud is not from the time of Christ, they remain unable to definitively explain what it truly represents. For over a century, scientists have diligently pursued the investigation of this sacred relic, yearning for a definitive answer. Yet, despite the employment of the most advanced scientific technology today, no one has managed to replicate the mysterious image it bears. Nevertheless, scientific progress has brought forth a gradual unveiling of new evidence, bolstering the case for the Shroud of Turin's authenticity. To begin, let's consider the insights of Barry Schwartz, a member of the team that conducted the initial examination of the shroud. He served as the official photographer for the Shroud of Turin research project. The primary aim of their study was to ascertain the formation process behind the image on the shroud. Being a non-practicing Jew at that time, he had reservations about joining the team and doubted the authenticity of the shroud, assuming it was merely an intricate painting. Nevertheless, during their meticulous examination of the fabric, he stumbled upon one of the enduring mysteries of the image, which continues to captivate researchers to this day. He clarified that they utilized a specialized instrument designed for X-ray evaluation, capable of stretching the lights, and this artwork stands as the most iconic portrayal of Jesus Christ ever created. Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. This timeless work of art transcends mere source for conspiracy theories, offering instead the most enduring and iconic representation of Jesus' physical appearance in popular culture through the years. However, as time moves forward, there is growing speculation about the accuracy of the portrayal of history's most celebrated figure. There's been a growing agreement that Jesus was of Middle Eastern descent rather than European. This recognition has sparked discussions about the cultural inaccuracies prevalent in traditional depictions of him. In response, contemporary artists and scientists are striving to create more accurate and respectful visual interpretations of Jesus Christ. Among these innovators, Richard Neve stands out for his pioneering anthropological reconstructions, while Bas Uterwijk is celebrated for his realistic digital portrayals. The persistent debate over Christ's true likeness is expected given the Holy Bible's silence on his physical features, which leads us to a crucial question. Are there any artifacts available that could provide insight into what Jesus might have looked like? Fortunately for us, there exists a remarkable relic that provides just that glimpse, the Shroud of Turin. This burial shroud captures the vivid life-size imprints of a crucified man, unparalleled in detail by any other artifact around the globe, believed by many to depict Jesus himself. Despite its historical significance, the cloth has stirred controversy, facing skepticism and being labeled by some as the most intricate and masterful hoax in history. But in this video, we'll dive into the most compelling proof that shows the shroud is more than just an old piece of cloth. It's a real glimpse into what Jesus looked like. This evidence is so persuasive that even the most skeptical viewers might find themselves re-evaluating their stance on the shroud's authenticity. To truly appreciate the transformation of Jesus' portrayal over time, we must journey back to the most ancient depiction discovered. This image captures a moment shared in all three synoptic gospels: the miraculous healing of a paralyzed man, lowered through a roof to meet Jesus. In this depiction, the healed man, now bearing his bed, stands to the left, while Jesus is illustrated on the right, embodying the traditional Roman aesthetic with short hair, a bare face, and adorned in a modest tunic and cloak. However, this particular depiction is believed to date back to around 35 AD, highlighting the scarcity of visual representations from the first 2 centuries after Jesus' passing. There's one particularly intriguing discovery that is believed to be an even older representation of Jesus, though it serves not to honor, but to mock him. In this instance, Jesus' facial features are not depicted, as the image is merely a piece of crude graffiti. Discovered on the walls of Rome's Palatine Hill, this image was crafted by a non-Christian to ridicule a believer named Aleximenos. Accompanied by a mocking Greek inscription, Aleximenos worships his god. The drawing depicts a figure, likely Aleximenos, next to a crucified figure with a donkey's head, intentionally distorting Jesus' image. This serves as a poignant reminder of the scorn and derision early Christians endured from their contemporaries. Through time, the way Jesus looks in pictures has changed, showing what artists felt during their time. Yet the image of Jesus that most people know today comes from Warner Salmon's Head of Christ, made in 1940, with Jesus having light eyes and hair. Salmon leveraged his marketing expertise to make his depiction of Jesus a global icon. In 2023, the imagery of the Shroud of Turin was brought to life in a remarkable way when the Salamanca Cathedral revealed an awe-inspiring, hyper-realistic sculpture of Jesus Christ. This masterpiece, known as the Mystery Man, was intricately designed using detailed information from the Shroud of Turin. Crafted from latex and silicone and embellished with real human hair, this lifelike sculpture weighs in at around 165 pounds. The sculpture captures the solemn stillness of death, with the body's rigidity reflecting rigor mortis. The legs are subtly bent, and the hands are respectfully positioned over the lower abdomen, encapsulating the dignified serenity of Christ in crucifixion. The head of the figure is marked by poignant wounds and bloodstains, reminiscent of the agony endured from the crown of thorns. Thanks to this revolutionary sculpture, we've got a pretty clear picture of what Jesus might have looked like. But the big question is, how can we confirm the authenticity of this cloth as the genuine burial shroud of Jesus? You might expect scientists to be the first to question the shroud's authenticity, but you're in for a surprise. In fact, it's the scientists leading the charge who are reinforcing the evidence that supports the cloth's genuine nature. For example, Professor Giulio Fanti from the University of Padua developed a novel dating method by examining the decay of linen fibers. This technique dates the cloth to around 33 AD, aligning with the time of Jesus' burial. Another one is Professor Liberato De Caro of the Italian National Research Council, who utilized sophisticated X-ray techniques to authenticate the shroud's linen as originating from the 1st century. By analyzing a thread from the shroud alongside a textile discovered at the historically significant Masada site besieged in 73 AD, De Caro's research decisively places the shroud within the context of ancient history, affirming its authenticity. On the other hand, Dr. Joseph Kolbach's intriguing study unveiled traces of limestone on the shroud, identical to the variety found in Jerusalem's tombs, known as Jerusalem limestone, predominantly sourced from this ancient city. Remarkably, the limestone residue on the shroud bore a striking resemblance to samples from near the Damascus Gate in the vicinity of Golgotha. This compelling evidence hints that the individual wrapped in the shroud may have traversed through Jerusalem prior to crucifixion, weaving a tangible connection to the historical landscape of Jesus' final days. Physicists John Jackson and Eric Jumper proposed a captivating theory regarding the subtle imprints above the eyes on the shroud's figure, suggesting they could be coins, a practice seen in Jewish burials of the 1st century. Intriguingly, the size of these imprints aligns closely with the dimensions of coins from the time of Pontius Pilate, spanning from 2 BC to 33 AD, drawing a fascinating link to the historical period of Jesus. If the works of these experts aren't enough, then let's take a look at the most astonishing discovery found by the team at the International Center of Studies on the Shroud of Turin, headquartered in Paris. The team observed 3 distinct evenly spaced lines, devoid of imagery beneath and around the chin area. They proceeded to carefully divide official photographs of the shroud into countless small fragments, assigning a specific brightness level to each. Following this, they utilized specialized software to conduct an in-depth visual analysis of these fragments. The outcome of this meticulous analysis was truly remarkable, as it uncovered a series of letters woven into the fabric in both Latin and Greek. Within these subtle inscriptions, references to Jesus were identified, including a clear mention of the term Nazarene. It's widely theorized that these texts were initially written on a separate piece of parchment by a scribe, then laid over the shroud, specifically over the face. This approach was probably chosen to help bereaved family members identify their loved one and perform the necessary burial ceremonies. The properties of the ink from that period could have facilitated the transfer of the text onto the linen. Importantly, this act of inscribing did not interfere with the creation of the shroud's mysterious image. This breakthrough discovery was important for 2 reasons. First, it challenged the notion that the inscription was of medieval origin. This is due to the fact that in that period, no Christian, certainly not a forger, would dare mention Jesus without acknowledging his divinity for fear of being condemned as a heretic. Secondly, specialists have affirmed that the script of the inscribed words corresponds with the writing styles found in the Middle East during the 1st century, the period during which Jesus lived. Now let's pause and think about what some folks are saying, that this relic is just an elaborate hoax. You'd imagine that if that were the case, scientists would have cracked the code on how it was made after thoroughly examining the shroud. But that's not what happened. Quite on the contrary, even with the most sophisticated technological tools at their disposal, scientists are still confused by the mysterious method by which the shroud's image came to be. This is despite the fact that experts were granted 5 consecutive 24-hour days to examine it at the royal palace. After their thorough research, they've come up with this conclusion. The image contains no pigment, suggesting it is not a result of paint or any known artistic method. This conclusion is further bolstered by the shroud's resilience to damage from 3 separate fires and exposure to water, which would have likely altered or damaged a painted or inked surface. Even without using some fancy technology, the image on the shroud would stand on its own to confirm its authenticity. It captures with astonishing precision the grueling specifics of a 1st century crucifixion, exactly as one might expect. Far from being just another crucifixion portrayal, the shroud intimately aligns with the vivid narratives of Jesus' ordeal, detailed in the Gospels. This is exemplified by the depiction of Jesus' crucifixion, enduring for merely 6 hours, in stark contrast to the prolonged agony of typical Roman crucifixions that could span several days, underscoring the intense severity of his suffering. The shroud also captures a unique detail from the Gospels. Jesus' legs were left intact, contrary to the typical crucifixion method designed to hasten death. This significant deviation, which fulfills a prophecy, is vividly corroborated by the shroud's imagery. A common modern misunderstanding is the belief that crucifixion involved nailing hands through the palms. However, archaeological evidence has debunked this notion, showing instead that nails were driven through the wrists to ensure stability and allow the crucified to adjust their position for breath. This critical detail is accurately reflected in the nail marks on the shroud, reinforcing its authenticity, as a forger from a later period would not likely have known this specific aspect of Roman crucifixion practices. Just as a corroborating witness in the real world strengthens the credibility of a testimony, the Shroud of Turin finds validation in a similar artifact, the Sudarium of Oviedo. Believed to have been placed over the face of Jesus after his crucifixion, this twin cloth reinforces the authenticity of the shroud. The credibility of these two cloths is reinforced by overlapping evidence. Notably, both bear blood and lymph stains of the AB type, a rarity in the broader population, but more prevalent among Jewish communities. Another extraordinary correlation came to light when the facial features extracted from the Shroud of Turin through the VP8 image analyzer were aligned with the geometric and physical details of the Sudarium. This comparison revealed a remarkable match between the two. Through advanced palynological analysis, scientists have made a remarkable discovery with the fabrics, traces of pollen that act as clear geographical indicators. The majority of these pollen grains were exclusive to Palestinian plants, with some being particularly linked to Jerusalem. Moreover, both cloths bear distinctive traces of limestone dust characterized by low strontium levels, mirroring the specific limestone composition of Calvary in Jerusalem. This particular geochemical footprint robustly anchors both cloths to the Jerusalem landscape, resonating with the time of Jesus. Ultimately, the Shroud of Turin serves as a mute witness to the deep suffering and sacrifice Jesus Christ endured for humanity. What truly counts is not the quantity of evidence laid out, but rather the faith nurtured within our hearts and souls, recognizing the boundless pain Jesus Christ underwent for our salvation and redemption. But what are your thoughts about this? I hope you like our story. Until the next one.